Satnam. My name is Nam Joti with Tree of Life Kundalini Yoga, and this is the first of a YouTube talk show series that I'm excited to bring you. I'm here with Dr. Siri Atma S, Khalsa, who was personally trained by Kundalini Yoga by the master Yogi Bhajan. Siri Atma is also a medical doctor, the author of several books. He's a fellow California native. He loves surfing and gardening, and I'm just really happy that you're here and that you consented to do this so we can hang out and talk. And I'm also excited because I think that my audience will enjoy what you have to offer.
Well, thank you.
So,
I think it's a good topic.
Pardon?
I think it's a great topic.
Oh yes, we'll get into the topic in just a minute. But first, let's talk. Let's tell them. I'd love for you to share a little bit about your background. I was reading your book, so I'm also a book author, and I think both book authors are awesome because it's a lot of work and energy to put together a book. And so I've been really enjoying Waves of Healing, and you have a little bit about your story in there. And one of the things that you say is, it says you were looking for someone when you were younger to validate your truth. It occurred to me that unless there was someone else exactly like me, I could spend my entire life searching for validation instead of discovering my truth through self-expression. I decided that if I took my path, I would be more likely to encounter like-minded souls. I love that. Can you tell me more about that path and then what you did encounter? Just briefly give some of your background.
Sure. So I think that the spiritual path for everybody, a true spiritual path for everybody, is a little bit scary. And it's scary because there's many reasons to not be you. One of those is that if I'm not really me and I'm rejected, you're not really rejecting me, you're rejecting my persona. So I'm keeping my persona out there and my real self hidden for protection. And when you get caught up into this whole situation where you're acting according to other people's expectations and rules and so on, which you often are as a child, because you're small and vulnerable to your parents' expressions of love or withholding thereof, and whatever else. It goes downhill from there sometimes. So it's with a certain amount of trepidation that when the spirit in you wakes up and starts to express itself, that there's an immediate response of, well, if I follow this, will I lose friends? Will I lose my identity? Because you're not even really sure who your identity is at this stage. And then you see crazy people. And so you're thinking, well, what's the chance I'm just crazy at this point in my life? And I'm losing it. So there's a number of thoughts that go through your mind. And I think that in this sort of mix, you look for people that validate what you're feeling inside. Now, those people serve two purposes in my mind. One is, first of all, I started this process really young, maybe between 14 and 16 years of age. And the hard part there is you don't have a lot of friends that have necessarily decided that's important to them yet. Mm-hmm. And parents can be off-putting. My father's response was, until you have a PhD in particle physics, you're not qualified to ask these questions. Mm-hmm. And I understand his viewpoint. I also understand my viewpoint. And I think that if you're going to approach the spiritual path, you have to approach it as an artist. And when I say that, you have to approach art as being an attempt at finding what is in your heart, in your soul, and sharing it with other people through some form of expression. I do it the way I am right now, mostly by teaching. Some people do it through art. I also do it through gardening, because my garden is an expression of sorts. So I think that if I was to give a suggestion as to a path shortening technique, it is to realize that art is the expression of the truth that you find within you through some media, any type of media, doesn't matter what, even if it's just talking with your friends, over a cup of tea. But the thing that you're trying to do is that in you, you have a feeling, you have something that you can hear, you can sense, it's on the edge of your awareness. And you're trying to beef that up, to give it more form, however that takes. So you see some people that have lived before you, and they've obviously spent years thinking about these same thoughts. And these are your shortcuts. These are your guides. And everybody has the people that really influence them. If you talk with a musician, they'll say they were influenced by these people. They really helped them find their sound. And it's different than being a cover band. I would really say that for a lot of people, the spiritual path is just playing covers. And playing a cover is when you spend your whole life practicing the teaching of another man or another woman, which was their expression, rather than coming to the depth of your own. So I think that you can easily divide people on the spiritual path into those people that are mystics and those people that are just seeking sort of a peace and harmony in life. And there's no doubt that religious paths create peace and harmony. But for those people that feel this depth of soul that needs to be expressed, this will never be enough. And this was the classic tale in Hermann Hesse's Siddhartha, in my mind. So there's the story told in detail. No need to repeat it.
Thank you. I love what you say about art and about expressing and trying to express the unseen and give it voice, because I am an artist and I'm a poet, and I think for a lot of years it was like an uphill struggle against everything and everyone for that to be okay, but for that to have value. Now, it was okay as a side thing, but not as but just to go and study poetry was for a lot of us to be on any sort of spiritual path we're definitely fighting against the mainstream. And it takes a lot of courage. So thank you for your words on that. And then after that, you were guided to Yogi Bhajan, and you found that path. And I'm going to quote from your book again. You said, so people are attracted to spiritual paths for different reasons. You brought this up. And you said, my ego was attracted to spiritual power. The social status of being a saint or great healer was attractive to my ego, while the good deeds performed by being saintly was attractive to my soul. That's when I started the spiritual path. My ego and my soul were in alignment. Both wanted the same thing for different reasons. Can you talk about what happened next and where your ego went from there and how you dealt with it, or how Yogi Bhajan dealt with it?
So if I was to describe the way I see the world of my youth and the beginning of the spiritual path, I would say that basically it's like being in a room with just a solid cement floor, but the floor's covered with marbles. And it's just littered with marbles. And you don't know which of these marbles have value and which don't. And the marbles represent karma. And so as a young person, you don't know what karmas are coming back to you, what karmas you're even creating in the moment. And you need some way to filter out what is good and what is bad, so that you can just sort of clean up this mess and make some sense out of it. So you're not really starting the expression of your art. Once the floor is cleaned, you can set up your art easel or whatever it is you're going to do and create something. But the beginning of the path is just really getting a sense of what is right and wrong. So the first part of the path is finding a path which is in harmony with your sense of right and wrong. So you get started on the path, you find a teacher that's in harmony with your sense of right and wrong, and you start sort of following their direction. And that takes, initially, I would say, at least 3 years. Now, if during this time you're learning techniques like yoga and meditation, the yoga and the meditation are tuning you in to what's right and wrong for you. I don't think that people know this originally. I think that people initially think that they're tuning into some absolute truth, because that's the way it's been traditionally taught to us. And, you know, you really have to look at religions as scores of music, and they may be just monumental pieces of music, but you're expected to improvise and add your soul to the piece if you're going to copy it. So you start this situation where you're just learning the basic keyboard, you're just learning the technique, and you learn what's right and wrong. And as you do what's right and wrong, you clean up your karma. And the karma, like these scattered marbles on the floor, they start to sort themselves out. You really don't have to worry about sorting them out. They'll sort themselves out. What you really need to do is to clean up the floor. And you can clean up the floor 2 ways. The first is just to do it along some traditional path that's in harmony with you. But as you go along, you're going to say, well, you know, however this other person did it, this isn't right for me. And you're going to make an adjustment which fits for you. And at some point in this cleanup process, so in the beginning of the process, you're taking on the path. The path is coming to you. Hold on a second. So you're in a situation where the path is guiding you, and you're receiving from the path, because the path is teaching you right from wrong. And at another point in the path, which happens between, say, the 3rd and 5th year, you realize that within you is a truth that you have to add to the path. And here is a break point in many people's spiritual path. Because at this point, they see themselves as having to make a break with the path and establish their way as an individual truth. And they don't see that really, in this case, it's just a recipe, and they like a little more ginger or garlic in there. And okay.
Okay.
And so at this point, what you have to do is you stick with the path that you're on, but you bring to the path your flavor of purity, your flavor of sainthood.
Okay, that's beautiful. I love it. Because can you explain what you said? You get to a point where you feel like it's not working for you and you need to break with the path, but can you repeat that again? Just repeat it.
Sure. No, I'm going to go back. I'm not going to just repeat it. I'm going to expand on it. Okay. Okay. So basically, in that beginning where you're trepidatious about your authenticity and being authentic because of what it may mean socially to you, you know, because, I mean, socially is a powerful thing. I mean, without social skills, you don't even get a job these days. I mean, most jobs require you to either have a certain amount of charisma, or you get it because your friend gets you the job because they vouch for you. You know, and so these social, when you start breaking with social norms, it threatens your very survival as a human being.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah, so it's not a small thing. So within this fear, and remember, all of spirituality, I'm going to digress for just a moment, but all of spirituality is really about you getting rid of fear. And all of this conflict in our lives all comes from our inner fear. But we'll get to that at some other point. in any case, in this mix where you're afraid of being who you really are, sometimes you're sort of like the scared guy in a bar who actually makes the fight happen because they're really afraid of the fight. They can't back down. They bluster. And so in trying to give yourself more support and more courage, you get angry at the path for not supporting you because it's not in alignment with the fact that you like 3 cloves of garlic instead of 2. And so you really have to, at this point, as you're starting to realize you bring something new to this path, my 2 suggestions would be, 1, don't break from the path, but add the spices that you bring and realize that you're bringing a flavor and that everyone will benefit from your flavor. Mm-hmm. And when I first described this, what is your flavor? It's where people bump into you, where people step on your toes. It's where they don't know the dance, but you do. Mm-hmm. The problem that I think that people face is that everybody has a talent. And where you have your talent, you never know what it is to be without that talent. So for your whole life, this has been easy for you. And when you see people doing things that you would never do, you assume they do it intentionally. When it's not intentional at all, they just don't know the tune. They don't know the steps. Mm-hmm. And so then this gives you your path, because your path now becomes teaching people your dance. Because what you're bringing to the faith or the path are your steps.
I think you just described my life.
Everybody.
Well, I mean, it's true. Like I grew up in that, I grew up Mormon, and I was just so I was so interested in everything, and I just had to bring it all in.
Right. And I think that, when you are in a major religion, at least for me, if you're a mystic, the question goes, how do I go from belief to experience? I don't want to know that other people have had this experience. I don't want to know that other people believe it's true because they can. I want to believe it's true because I can, because it's my experience. And how do you make that? And in doing this, you start looking for the way in which all religions are similar. So when I studied philosophy and religion, I used what I called my triangulation theory of religions. Mm-hmm. And the way it broke down for me is if one religion says it, it's probably cultural. If 2 religions say it, it may have value. You need to look at it a little closer. If 3 religions or more point in that same direction, then it's probably a universal truth. And you need to study it and find out, what aspect of that really applies to you. Mm-hmm. Yeah. The whole thing is, though, that so many people that are religious end up playing trombone when they should be playing clarinet. Somehow somebody forces them into the wrong instrument on the band, and so they're not having a good time.
Mm-hmm. So they think they need to get out of the band.
Right.
Need to change their instrument. or remember just listen to their soul, right? Like,
right.
Yeah.
I mean, most religions are so broad that you can find a little niche within them where you can be you.
Yeah.
I think it's much harder when you're young. For me, the most important thing when I was young was lack of hypocrisy. That was a real big one. Mm-hmm. And my teacher had to basically act in front of me the way I thought a spiritual teacher should act. And, I'd read enough Buddhist history to know that there were hundreds of Zen masters that actually, if you wanted them to act in way A, would act in way B just to put you off. They were just to see whether you could see behind the surface. Mm-hmm. Okay. And yet even knowing this, he had to basically baby me along because I didn't have the strength to afford a slap. against my belief system. And, you know, and that, so this brings up the second part of what I would say is that in the spiritual process, when you read what other people have experienced, when you have the experience, my experience is that 75% of the time I would use the exact same expression. I wouldn't say anything else to describe the experience. But I would say 100% of the time on that 75%, my understanding of the experience before and after was 100% wrong. So you read about it, you get a sense of it, but it's not the experience. And once you have the experience, you find that it's something else. Another 25% of the time, you will find that the experience is completely different for you. So when you find that, is that a problem? No, from my point of view, that is like that you're now finding out that you're a clarinet player, not a trumpet player. And that 25% means that you're going to teach people who play to play clarinet, not trumpet. Mm-hmm. And so you seek those people spiritually mm-hmm. that have a similar, you know, experience, spiritual, mystic experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I didn't have very many of them, so I had to go teach and create them. You know, I like find friends and here, come with me, and we're gonna all have this mystic experience, and some stick and some don't, I guess. And then you find teachers. Tell us about having a spiritual teacher.
Okay, one sec. I want to comment on that. Okay. When I was young, I used to say, I don't make friends, I make friends. Because, you know, you had to train your friend to understand, yeah, so you could have the experience together.
Yeah, that's funny. I like that. I never thought of that, but yeah, I make them.
And I was aware that I was training my friends probably by the time I was 6 or 8. I mean, what could you do? You had to. You didn't have a choice.
Yeah. I think my daughter needs to like learn how to train her friends.
You know, you can't feel guilty for it. I mean, but the hard part for me was that at that time that I moved into my spirituality was the time that these friends that I made pretty much all went their own way. Mm-hmm. And I had basically been influencing them. And as they came into their own, you know, our pathway split. It was a real heartache because, you know, you lose people. And if you're going into the spiritual path like me, many of these people that I lost went down dark paths, and you just watch them suffer for a long time. And that was hard. So you had a question about spiritual teacher.
Yeah, I mean, you said in your book that the job of a spiritual teacher is to help, let's see if I have it here, help you avoid like the pitfalls of.
Okay, so there's several roles of spiritual teacher. In the first days, the spiritual teacher makes sure that you know right from wrong. And the second thing a teacher does is try to give you techniques by which you can clear your karma as quickly as possible. Mm-hmm. You're going to have karma coming back from prior actions before the two of you met. And that will go on for 10, 20, 30, 40 years, probably for the whole life at some level. But at the first part, it's really like that floor full of marbles. And it takes a long time until the marbles are down to the point that you can walk through your life without running into one, or without running into karma. And, you know, I think that when people start the spiritual path, this is the place they get mad at their teacher. And they get mad at their life, and they get mad at God because things don't clear as fast as they think they should. But things take their own time. There's no way you can speed it up. The knowledge by which, that sensitivity by which you're identifying your own self, your true authenticity, is the same sensitivity with which you will know that your life is clearing karmically or not. So you use that same awareness. It's not different. Just as you feel what is you, you also feel goodness or badness coming to you as the result of your actions or planned actions or intentions. Mm-hmm. And, you know, this is particularly something that I harp on because I'm a physician, and that means that I'm around a lot of people that want to do psychic healing, and they absolutely have to pay attention to what their soul is talking to them about what they're going to do, because that's your guide of whether you can or you can't. And if you can't, then you find out, well, what can I do? In every healing situation, it's not about what I can do. It's about what am I supposed to do? It's a different question. What is my role here? That's what I'm asking. And people that think that when they see somebody do something and they want that ability, they think that that person owns the ability. In healing, that's not it. It's a borrowed ability that is specific for that person, and it's a thing that's going on there and only there.
Right. Okay. Well, if we get into healing, we're going to go down a whole
Oh,
other.
you got to rope me in. Good for you.
And you do have a workshop coming up about it. We can promote that at the end, and we'll tell people how to watch that workshop. But you are a medical doctor. You were Yogi Bhajan's personal physician for 8 or 10 years.
Yes.
And so you had a lot of time right there with him being taught in many ways.
He very much forced me practically to learn how to heal without intention. That was his goal. He said, heal me, don't use Eastern, don't use Western, don't use psychic. And what I didn't understand was what he was basically doing is blocking off all methods by which there was intention. And so you learn how to heal through your own purity, and that becomes really,
You take your ego out of it.
Yes. And so the one thing that you're allowed to do is, as much as you want, is to be pure. And what is purity? Well, purity is when you're living to your highest conscience. And what is your highest conscience? Well, you use that same knowing. It's a knowing, and that's what you're doing the yoga and the meditation for, is to tune into that knowing. And it's by going into this knowing that you know what karma is, what the bad karma is that's around you that's just coming back because of stuff you did before. And it's not necessary to know how you created it or why it's coming back. That's unnecessary. All you need to know is what I'm about to do creating karma? And you know that. I mean, if that's your question, any question you ask, the knowing is right there in the instant.
Right.
So a lot of the early stages of yoga and meditation is just learning to trust this knowing and have it volume increase.
Awesome. So, okay, let's get to our topic for today, which is so we've been talking about all these amazing things about spirituality and the spiritual path and the spiritual teachers and clearing karma. Our topic today, and I think I taught for years, and I was really into like the bliss and merging with God and
right.
Make all my friends learn how to do this and be. But there's this other part that we are householders and we are in a physical reality, and we have to put gas in our car and floss our teeth, process medical claims, things like that. So the topic is integrated yogic living. So how do we use, I think it took me a while to realize, I think when I first got on the path, I was like, Kundalini yoga, you think you found the golden ticket to life. And and you're like, and then like
3 years, it's going to be over.
This is the purpose of my life, and I'm just going to teach everyone, and everything's amazing. And then I realized, no, Kundalini yoga is not the purpose of my life. It helps me live my purpose, right? And it helps me deal with people in customer service. And so talk a little bit about yogic integrated living and what that means to you, and maybe how we can all do it better.
Sure. No. Yes. So, okay. So the way I see it is going to be obviously my viewpoint as a medical doctor. So this is how I would explain it. I felt at one point in my life that I wanted to be a healer. And I went out to learn to be a healer. I studied a lot of different fashions, including yoga and alternatives of many varieties. And then I went to medical school. All of that is your training, but none of that is your service. Your service is being a doctor. So the true play out of your training, of all of your practice, is the healing that takes place between you and another person. Now, just like that, when you practice yoga and meditation, it's where you're learning to tune into what you know is right and developing the strength of character to act on what you know is right, developing the confidence to be what is right. And as you live more and more righteously, your path unfolds. And as your path unfolds, you get desires just like everybody does. And you say, yeah, you know, I'd really like to spend the rest of my life working medicine part-time and designing, you know, wind sailing sails in Hood River. And that's not the way God wants you to live your life. And with the same awareness that you're developing through your yoga meditation, you're aware that this is a truism, that that's not what God wants. And God for me is just that knowing. I mean, I don't perceive God. How do I perceive God without the knowing? I mean, obviously there's the miracle, which is the life that we lead and all the life around us. But my experience with God is the knowing. And the seek path is the one that I take. And in that, what I'm speaking to specifically is that Nanak always describes himself as slave Nanak. And that sounds sort of bad, but what he's speaking is that inside himself, he hears this truth that seems to just be this infinite, timeless truth, even though it may be just specific for this instant of healing between you and this other person. But you follow it like a slave. You suspend all desire, and all you do is you follow this truth. When you do that, you experience bliss because there is no betrayal. When you don't follow that, there's a self-betrayal. You're not being as you were created, basically. People think being as you created means keeping long hair or a beard or being crude, rude, or whatever. That's not what it is. Being as you're created is at its deepest level that when you're told do this, you do that. And when you are told not to do this, you don't do that. And you just follow this very, very deeply. And, you know, so when you're first sort of making this transition from a beginning meditator to bringing this into your life, you do it, you know, obviously, since I was trying to take this awareness into an intensive care room, I didn't start there. I started in the clinic, and I then started in the wards, and then I started in the subacute, and then I moved into the ICU with it. And I did that over about 7 or 8 years. So it wasn't a rapid thing. And I let my ability to listen to that truth and follow it just blindly. Mm-hmm. And it's not that you're following it blindly. I've got to segue here a little bit because you know they're the people, they're like the pom-pom girls of religions, and they're always making something more than it is. Mm-hmm. The goal is not to diminish it nor enhance it. Just be right on it. Mm-hmm. It's just like playing a piece of music. There's a timing and an intensity and a duration. All have to be part of the note. And there's an ambiance to that note. And so what you're doing as you learn to express this authentic self is you're just getting more and more nuanced. Mm-hmm. So your life is the same actions. The only difference is they're more and more nuanced.
Mm-hmm. Can you
To
give
the,
an example?
yes, I walk into a room and I do the exact same thing and speak the exact same words as my colleague.
Mm-hmm.
And in one, the patient gets it, and another, they don't get anything. The difference was timing, delivery, intonation of my words, the way I looked at the patient, the way I sat next to the patient. Everything I did was an expression.
Mm-hmm.
And none of it was taken randomly. And none of it was taken with thought of self-reward or something in the future. There was no intention there. All I was doing was listening.
Mm-hmm.
All I was doing was listening to what that person needed.
Mm-hmm.
So there were minor variations that made it successful versus unsuccessful.
Right. And so this is how yoga tunes your everyday interactions in your profession, for example.
So there's three things that yoga is doing. The first thing is yoga directly improves my karma. Second, yoga makes me aware of what karma is so that I don't make more for myself when I'm not actually on the mat. And three, it gives me a sensitivity for refinement that allows me to take the exact same action but get a different result.
Okay.
Okay? I mean, two people can throw a seed in the ground
Mm-hmm.
and one have a tree and the other nothing. What is the difference? There's little details that aren't spoken. And then people try to codify those details. The whole point is to get away from that codification. Because once it's codified, you're in the realm of AI. You might as well have a computer do it. What is the, in a world of computers, as we move into this world of computers, what do you bring to the table?
Right.
The thing you bring to your table is this connection with the infinite,
Right.
which is this knowing of what you're supposed to do and be in every second.
I was just listening to a podcast with a poet, Joy Harjo, and she said the internet brings us so much connectivity, but the only thing the internet can't connect you with is your soul.
Yeah, that's true.
And so, speaking of getting back to like the idea of like betraying yourself and your soul, it's, I think what you're saying, you said, you had this awareness that was not what God wanted for you. And so,
Right.
but really you and God are one. So if you had done it, you would have been betraying yourself. Right. So
and if you do that, understand that it's not like there's no walk back from that poor decision. There's always a walk back. But as you know, there are some decisions in life where the walk back may take more than a lifetime.
yeah. Mm-hmm. So the sensitivity, even when we're talking on the phone to customer service agents, or even, like these things, this is what yoga does for us.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
But within this, on the spiritual path, I think, so there's two traps that people fall into. The first trap is thinking that by following, I'll call it codified religion, okay? Codified religion perfectly, they're going to get the spiritual experience. They won't.
Yeah.
The spiritual experience occurs when you play to the room. You always have to play to the room.
Right.
Music is played to the room.
Right. I understand what you mean. But if somebody didn't, could you give an example?
Sure. When you're talking about art, you look at the difference where you separate technique from expression. And that's best seen when you look at something that a child does, where you see this pure expression but no technique. Versus when you walk into a gallery and you see somebody that has perfect technique, but you wouldn't want to hold it on the wall because there's no true expression of anything there.
Yeah.
So A person that lives codified religion perfectly is a person with pure technique.
Mhm.
But what they're really trying to do, the whole purpose of art is to express your soul. And if
Mhm.
you're not doing that, you're missing the whole point of it. And they get very, very frustrated and they say this religion doesn't work. I did everything right. I didn't get what I was supposed to get.
Mhm.
But really, if you think about it, what they did wrong was they're like the PhD student who thought that they could get a doctorate without bringing something new into the world. You
Mhm.
can't go into your doctorate thesis and repeat other people's truths. The
Mhm.
only thing that gives you that doctorate is you go in there and you bring forth a new truth onto the earth, and your teachers think it is of enough significance that you should be awarded a doctorate. This is, and when you're talking about your own mystic growth,
Mhm.
you have to be bringing out that part is you. So you have to, first of all, believe that what you are has value. And I think that's what a group does when you join a group. I mean, the main point of a group is to say everybody in this group has value, and
Mhm.
we're going to help you bring out your truth, your value, because sometimes you just need that perspective, you know.
Mhm.
And then the second thing is that when a person's trying to bring out their value, they get into a sense of perfectionism.
Mhm.
When you start getting this awareness, you can have you can apply that awareness to everything. And it's not necessary to apply it to everything. It's in the beginning, you just apply it to what's really, really important, to the big decisions. And
Mhm.
then as you get better and better, and it just becomes a natural part of your flowing rhythm of life, well, then you can get more detailed,
Right.
you know.
Yeah.
So
I I'm I'm a recovering perfectionist, so I understand.
and the way I describe that is, you know, say that you could paint the perfect tree, but you can't paint a dog at all. Then you paint the dog first, and you make sure that the tree isn't painted much better than the dog, so that it all fits.
Uh, I love that one. See, this is why I like you. You speak in these beautiful metaphors. It's like
Thank you.
poems, and anyway. So we're running out of time. We could probably
Okay.
talk like 10 more years.
Hmm?
So let's talk again, shall we? And
Sure.
let's invite people to your next workshop. You're doing a workshop in Ojai in February.
That's correct.
It's a lecture, and will you be teaching meditation too?
Whatever you want,
Play
I
to
will
the room. You're gonna play to the room.
play to the room.
If you're interested in healing or what, just hearing more from Siri Atma, you can find out more about that on what's your website? drsiriatma.com or something like that.
Oh, I think Nam dissolved it.
They can email me.
They
And
can
I'll send
email
you-
Nam at namkaur, NAMKAUR, at gmail.com.
At gmail.com or on Facebook. You have a couple Facebook pages.
She'll send a flyer. Yeah, I have the Waves of Healing,
Mhm.
and we have the 3 books. The Waves of Healing, I think, is a fabulous beginner's book.
I have it right here, and even though I don't know, I've been on the path like 10 years or 13 years. I still think it's a great book.
Thank you.
And there's a bunch of great kriyas and meditations. I've been doing the radiant body one. It's just amazing. I feel like poison energy coming out of my ear. It's really cool. I'm like, this is doing something. So that was good. Tell us about your other 2 books that you have.
So we have Identity and
This one,
Intuition and Destiny. Yes, that one.
Intuition and Destiny. And I
Okay.
haven't gotten into this one yet. So tell me about this one.
So Intuition and Destiny, I think the first part that meditation does is it develops your intuition. And then the second question is, how do you use that intuition to find your destiny?
Mm-hmm.
And there we're talking about basically you start by following where people bump into you and step on your toes, because that teaches you maybe where you have a talent And then as you define your talent and you develop your talent, then you reach your destiny through the perfection of expression of your talent. And then our other one is divine relationships. And this is a compilation of the Siri of Yogi Bhajan's teachings on male-female relationships. And this, in my mind, is a very, it's more of a textbook, because, you know, relationships are just so individual and so fluid, and they go through so many changes. So it's just a number of techniques, you know, go through, find the ones that apply to you. And
yeah, it looks like there's some great photos and sets and techniques. And you co-wrote this with your wife, Nam, right?
Yes. Nam is the expert. I am the willing participant and learning. When it comes to relationships,
it's nice to have the team.
Well, it's nice to dance with an expert.
Yes, it is. So, and then, so that's coming up. Your Facebook page, Waves of Healing, or you can learn about it through my page. I will link it there, or in the comments below, or in the thing below. On treeoflifeyoga.com. You also are going to be guest lecturing at Conscious Communication Level 2 training in Ojai in March, and you can find that on treeoflifekundaliniyoga.com. And that's all for today. So if you liked this, you can like it, subscribe, click on the tree icon to subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment below. And it was really fun talking to you, Siri Atma. Let's do it again.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay. Satnam.